Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Marcus, and in today's video is one that has been requested by Hassa, I hope that name's right, several weeks ago, and this is all about device commissioning policies and how you actually go about implementing them and managing them within your business. Now, one thing that I've seen in a lot of my career over the last 30 years or so is that people don't think about what needs to be done when people leave the business or devices are no longer needed. I might be going a little bit old school type scenario here, but a lot of the time people within businesses think that if a device has a plug or anything like that on, it's just IT's fault. You know, IT needs to manage that. But that's not always the case. A lot of the time, you know, if you're decommissioning a device or someone's leaving the business, it should be going through several stages of the business. You know, HR should be informing IT of doing this. HR may be doing something else, or it might be a dedicated business department which actually talks and works with IT to actually get the whole process done. So it's not always just IT. But, you know, sometimes some part of it is IT, but ideally it should come from a proper decommissioning and offboarding process within the business that has been agreed by management and controlled or managed by HR or some other entity within the business. Now for this video, we're mainly going to be talking about and concentrating on device management. If you want to have some decommission policies or offboarding processes for staff within your business, do let me know in the comments below this video. Let me know that you're actually interested in this and we can go from there. Now, when it comes to devices and the management of them, the industry has seen a massive shift recently on the way that people manage the devices, especially when the world's pretty much been forced to work from home remotely. You know, businesses are closing and everyone's just working remote. A lot more people are now looking to use cloud-related technologies to help them with home working and business resilience. People are also started looking at how to actually manage and control devices within the business. You know, a lot more people are now starting to use MDM or mobile device management technology. This allows the IT or other people within the business to actually control and manage the devices remotely. And you know, if a device gets lost or stolen, they can remote wipe them, they can update devices and do all sorts of things like that, so it's really good. However, it's not just a quick win and done properly, and if done properly, requires a lot more than simply just configuring some device management software, deploying it to all your devices, sitting back and going, job's done. Firstly, you should be looking at building up or creating a new device commissioning policy, which when completed will be made available to all your appropriate staff within the business so they know actually how to deal with decommissioning devices. This policy will then form the basis of managing devices through a series of steps when it comes to actually removing that device out of service. It's also important to have that policy in place as it allows you to have a defined approach when controls and devices are removed from service. It also allows you to record what devices are active, how many devices have been removed, which devices are out of service, and it also gives you that ever important piece of evidence should you ever be audited sometime in the future. You can just go to the certain record or document and show that this device was removed on date whatever by whoever. So now that you have this policy created in whichever editor that you favour, you need to start from the beginning. Now this involves a lot of planning and ordering of the devices, I'm afraid, which if you've already got this document it'll be fairly painless, but you should still go through any records and document that you have, just make sure it's all up to date and correct. However, if you haven't actually got an asset register or you haven't documented all your devices and you're not sure what you have in place, you're going to have to go through, document all your devices, which should include things like switches, workstations, firewalls, routers, printers, anything that's got a plug on, pretty much anything that's electronic, anything that you define as a device within the business itself. You should look at that, include it, list it all down. Now from a documentation point of view, you should look to include things like the device name, IP address or IP addresses, vendor name, the model number, serial number. Do you have any contact information for the supplier? That's always helpful. And the list just goes on. The more information that you have, the better you'll be if anything goes wrong or if you need to identify anything. But this is completely down to you and how your business works. Your business might have different processes and procedures in place what another business has. You might document a lot more information than someone else does. It's whatever works for you, look at that way. Now, once you're in the planning stage, this process ideally should allow you to allocate a project manager. But if you don't actually have a project manager or you don't use them, you should appoint someone who's in charge of the project. This just allows you to have a single person in charge who can say, this needs to be done now, this has to be done, this has to be done. And there's no inter-team, arguing or there's no conflict of interest or anything like that. It just makes the project run a lot more smoother if there's one person in charge who just takes control and just goes from start to finish. Yes, you can have other people within the project, but as long as you've got someone who says yes or no to things. Now, also as part of the planning, you should also look at your local country laws or your local regional laws, just to see if there's anything specific for disposal requirements for electronic equipment. So for us here in the UK, we have the WEEE directive, or the WEEE directive, which states how you go about actually recycling electronic equipment. Now, once you know what you can and can't do with equipment, that should also be documented in your register or your policy. So that just gives you some information and a quick point of action. So if you go to decommission, I don't know, a server or a switch, you can have a look at your information and say, yes, it's this is all the information, this is what we can do to decommission it, these are the regulations or the laws that need to be done or adhered to. Now, next, once you have all the list of your devices, it's time to move on to defining and working out the procedures for the actual decommissioning of the devices. As part of the decommissioning process, you should ensure that any information located on the device is backed up. If it's not being backed up to the normal place, you should make a record of where it's being backed up, why it's being backed up, how long it needs to be backed up for, and why does it need to be kept. Now, also, you should look to see if there's any subscription-based services installed locally on the device that you're going to remove. You should also uninstall the software or the subscription, get the license back, and then that just keeps your licenses in check. The last thing you want to do is decommission a load of devices. You've got 10, 15 software licenses tied up on those. You can't retrieve them, and that's just wasted money. So you might as well just make sure you do a little bit of housekeeping as you go through your decommission process. Decommission any licenses that you need, take them off, and then put them back into your pool. Now, the next stage depends upon what you do with your physical drives when it comes to servers and workstations and laptops. Now, if you have confidential information on these devices, you should look to remove the information and either destroy the drives physically or use some kind of software to ensure that the data is removed properly. The last thing you want to do is sell or give away your devices. You've got the laptop, you've got the hard drives in the laptops or the servers or whatever, and then there's all your your company information, personal information, payment details, things like that. It'd be a data breach waiting to happen. Now, if, however, you use a third-party company to manage your decommission of your devices, for example, a managed IT provider or some kind of disposal person, you should ensure that you get everything logged from them. Make sure that things are being recorded. For example, when the device was handed over to them, to the provider, what was the provider's name? What did the provider do? Where did the device go later? Things like that. So if you've just got that audit trail going all the way through from start to finish, so if anything does happen, you've got your back covered. Now, the last phase or section is the actual disposition of the device. Depending upon how your business works, you may have to repurpose the device for someone else, but if you're looking to dispose of the device after many years of hard work, you should then ensure that you're going to give your device away, that the previous steps have been followed, all the confidential information, personal information, all that has been removed, that the drives are being properly wiped or removed, and that everything else has been recorded. Now, if you're going to use a third party to dispose of your devices, you should also ensure that you get a record of collection, just again to cover your back. Now, as you might have gathered through this, there's not really a lot of paperwork, but there's a lot of record keeping and housekeeping. When it comes to the devices, you should also know where your devices are, where they're not, and that just helps you with any auditing terms or anything like that. And that should be it. Obviously, it's hard to talk about decommissioning policies for a one-size-fits-all business. What one decommission policy works for one company may not work for another company. Obviously, it's a lot easier to define a decommissioning policy for a smaller business than what it is for a multinational or an international one, or even if it's a remote user one. But it should give you some points to think about, some kind of foundation to actually build the policy up from there and just work on that. Now, I hope this has been informative. If you do like this, feel free to like the video. It helps me understand, what videos are going well, what videos you're interested in, and things like that. And I'll see you next time.